in 1600 on the night before the Battle of Sekigahara, the single engagement that would determine who controlled all of Japan, Tokugawa Ieyasu did not feast. He did not call for elaborate trays of lacquered food or summon his finest cooks to prepare a warrior's last great meal. He ate plain rice porridge from a clay bowl, sitting on the ground in his field tent, while 200,000 men prepared to kill each other at dawn. That detail survives in historical record. Most people walk past it without stopping. We are stopping. The samurai that cinema built for you ate magnificently. Banquet tables groaning with food, elaborate ceremony, the full theater of feudal power. That samurai existed, but he was the exception. The top fraction of a warrior class that stretched from hereditary lords down to provincial foot soldiers who grew their own food and sharpened their own swords and ate whatever the season and the campaign allowed. Number 21 on this list was prescribed in warrior codes as a daily moral obligation, not just a meal, but a statement of character. Number 13 was technically considered peasant food, yet the greatest battlefield commanders in Japanese history ate it before their most consequential engagements. Number 5 involves a preservation technique so sophisticated that modern food scientists only recently understood the chemistry behind why it worked. Number 2 was eaten in complete silence by law. These are the 25 meals that actually fueled feudal Japan's warrior class, not the movie version. Not the museum version. The real food of real men who trained their bodies for decades, marched hundreds of miles on foot, and built one of the most disciplined military cultures the world has ever produced. Hit that subscribe button. Let us count down every single one. Number 25, Tanjiru, miso soup with pork and root vegetables. Begin here because this is where the samurai story actually starts. Not in a castle, not in a dojo, but in a field kitchen with an iron pot and whatever grew in the ground nearby. Early samurai of the Kamakura period, from 1185 to 1333, were not the refined aristocratic warriors of later centuries. They were provincial fighters. Farmer soldiers who cultivated land with the same hands they used to draw a bow. Tanjiru was their daily anchor. Pork and root vegetables, burdock and daikon and taro, simmered long in miso broth until the fat from the meat dissolved into the liquid and the vegetables softened completely. Excavations of warrior residences from the Kamakura era consistently produced the same physical evidence: large iron pots, root vegetable remnants, and pig bones cracked open for their marrow. The soup left no recipe card. It left only its traces in the ground, waiting 7 centuries to be found. Nutritionally, it delivered fat, protein, and complex carbohydrates in a single vessel. Everything a man needed who would spend the next 12 hours on horseback or on foot across difficult terrain. It was not elegant. It was not supposed to be. It was the meal of men who understood that the body was a tool and tools require maintenance. Number 24. Onigiri, rice balls wrapped in dried seaweed. The oldest battlefield food in Japanese history required no fire, no pot, no utensil, and no preparation time beyond the cook who shaped it the night before. Onigiri, compressed rice formed into a triangle or cylinder, wrapped in dried nori, appears in Japanese military records as early as the 11th century. By the Sengoku period, the era of near-constant civil war between 1467 and 1615, it had become the universal field ration of armies across the archipelago. The engineering behind onigiri is more sophisticated than it appears. Salt preserved the rice for a full day without refrigeration. The nori wrapping kept hands clean of rice starch during eating, which mattered when those hands needed to grip a weapon immediately afterward. A pickled plum pressed into the center added acidity that further inhibited bacterial growth. 3 to 4 rice balls per man per day was the standard campaign ration recorded in Sengoku military logistics documents. Generals ate the same thing as foot soldiers on the march. The samurai class built its military dominance on this humble, perfectly engineered piece of portable food, and the technology has not meaningfully changed in 1,000 years. Number 23. Umeboshi, pickled plum. No single item appears more consistently across samurai food records, military supply manifests, and warrior diary accounts than the pickled plum. Small, violently sour, preserved in salt and red shiso leaves until the flesh became almost unbearably intense, umeboshi were carried by virtually every fighting man in feudal Japan, regardless of rank. The physiological reasons are stacked. The citric acid in umeboshi helped muscles recover from the extraordinary physical demands of swordsmanship and sustained marching. The salt replaced electrolytes lost through sweat during combat and training. The antibacterial compounds in the plum helped prevent food spoilage when pressed against rice in a field ration. The sourness stimulated saliva production and appetite in men too exhausted or frightened to feel hungry. Samurai tradition described the combination of a white rice ball with a red umeboshi at its center as hinomaru, the rising sun in miniature. Men eating that meal before battle were eating a symbol of what they were fighting for. The nutrition was real. The meaning was also real. In the samurai tradition, these two things were never considered separate. Number 22. Ichiju Isai, one soup, one side. Here's the meal that warrior codes actually prescribe by name. Ichiju Isai, one soup, one side dish, rice, was the formal dietary philosophy of samurai frugality, written explicitly into the moral frameworks of multiple Edo period military scholars and Zen-influenced warrior philosophers. The argument was straightforward and serious. A man who required elaborate food to feel satisfied was a man who could not endure deprivation, and a man who could not endure deprivation would fail at the moment his lord most needed him. Tokugawa Ieyasu, who founded the last and longest shogunate, and by the end of his life controlled more wealth than almost any human being alive, ate Ichiju Isai throughout his life by deliberate personal choice. His biographers recorded this as the defining evidence of his character. His cooks, by all accounts, found it quietly maddening. The discipline was the point. What you chose not to eat was a declaration of who you were. More revealing, the warrior philosophers argued, than anything you might say about yourself with words. Number 21. Mugi meshi, barley and rice mixed grain. Pure, white, polished rice was expensive, politically significant, and largely unavailable to all but the highest-ranking samurai on a daily basis. The practical dietary reality for most warriors, from middle-ranking retainers down to the foot soldiers who formed the bulk of feudal armies, was mugi meshi. Rice extended with barley in proportions that varied according to rank, wealth, and supply availability. What nobody in the Sengoku period understood, but what modern nutritional science has since confirmed, is that the barley-dominant mugi meshi eaten by lower-ranking samurai was in several measurable ways more nutritionally effective than the white rice eaten by their superiors. Barley contains beta-glucan fiber that slows glucose release and sustains energy across hours of physical exertion. Polished white rice delivers a rapid glucose spike followed by a crash. The foot soldiers eating 70% barley had more stable energy on the march than the lords eating pure white rice, and the lords died younger from conditions that barley's fiber might have prevented. Status, in this particular case, was slowly killing the people who had it. First pattern break. Here's the thing that changes how you understand every meal on this list. The samurai relationship with food was not primarily practical and not primarily ceremonial. It was philosophical in ways that shaped everything from battlefield tactics to the architecture of Japanese cuisine for the next 400 years. Zen Buddhist monasteries trained many samurai in meditation and mental discipline. Those same monasteries established the foundational principles of Japanese vegetarian cuisine: seasonal, minimal, respectful of every ingredient, attentive to process rather than outcome. When samurai absorbed these ideas, they did so not as aesthetics, but as military doctrine. They believed with genuine conviction rooted in centuries of battlefield experience that a disordered appetite produced a disordered mind. A disordered mind got you killed. The food was the training. The restraint at the table was identical in kind, if not in physical form, to the restraint that kept your sword hand steady when another man was moving at full speed toward your throat. This is not metaphor. This is how the samurai actually thought about what they ate and why. Keep that in mind for every entry that follows. Number 20. Dashi, the invisible foundation. No samurai cook of any competence worked without dashi, the fundamental broth of kombu seaweed and dried bonito that underpins virtually all of Japanese cuisine to this day. In warrior households, dashi was not itself a dish. It was the liquid architecture inside every other dish, the flavor infrastructure, the invisible work that made simple ingredients taste like something worth eating. Kombu was harvested from cold northern waters and traded inland along routes connecting coastal communities to landlocked castle towns. Dried bonito, katsuobushi, was smoked, fermented, and dried into rock-hard blocks that survived months of storage and travel without deterioration. Combined in water, brought slowly to just below a boil, these two ingredients produced a broth of extraordinary savory depth from almost no effort. Samurai cooking manuals of the Muromachi period describe the correct preparation of dashi with the same precise technical language used to describe the care of a sword. The parallel was not incidental. In a culture that found spiritual meaning in the mastery of technique, getting the dashi exactly right was understood as a form of practice, the same focused attention applied to a different material. Number 19. Yakizakana, grilled river fish. Samurai castle towns were positioned near rivers for strategic reasons: water supply, natural defensive barriers, transportation routes. The rivers were also full of fish, and fish were the most reliably available protein source across every season and every level of samurai society. Ayu, the sweet river fish, trout, crucian carp, and various freshwater species were grilled whole over charcoal, seasoned with nothing beyond salt, and eaten alongside rice and pickles as the most common protein in a warrior household's weekly cycle. The technique was exact and considered. Salt was rubbed into the skin and gills. The fish was skewered at an angle that mimicked its living posture, a tradition that expressed respect for the animal whose life had been taken. Grilling proceeded slowly over moderate charcoal heat until the skin blistered and crisped and the flesh released cleanly from the bone. Every part was consumed. Small fish had their bones crisped to edibility. Larger fish had their bones cracked for marrow. Fishing rights along castle rivers were formally regulated under feudal law, the most productive pools reserved for the lord's household, lesser stretches allocated to retainers in descending order of rank. The fish in your bowl announced your position in the hierarchy as precisely as the crest on your armor. Number 18. Natto, fermented soybeans. The military origin story of natto is so consistently repeated across Japanese historical sources that it has the quality of myth, which in Japan often means it is substantially true. An 11th century general named Minamoto no Yoshie, the account goes, was preparing boiled soybeans for his horses when his camp was attacked. The beans were hastily packed in straw and abandoned for several days. When recovered, they had fermented into something sticky, pungent, threaded with white filaments, and still completely edible. Whether the story is precise history or accumulated legend, what it correctly captures is natto's identity as military food. Armies carried dried soybeans precisely because fermentation could occur in a saddlebag using naturally occurring bacillus spores in rice straw. The resulting natto provided complete protein, vitamin K2, critical for bone density under physical stress, and nattokinase, an enzyme that modern research has associated with cardiovascular health. Eastern samurai clans of the Kanto region ate natto with a consistency that Western clans found both incomprehensible and faintly offensive. The dietary divide mapped almost exactly onto cultural and political divides that shaped Japanese history for centuries. What you fermented, and whether you ate it at all, was a form of regional identity as strong as dialect or clan allegiance. Number 17. Shojin Ryori, Zen temple vegetarian cuisine. Samurai who entered Buddhist temples for extended training or spiritual retreat ate what the monks ate. Shojin Ryori, the strict vegetarian cuisine of Zen monasticism, permitted no meat, no fish, and no alliums, no garlic, no onion, no leek. These were excluded not for nutritional reasons, but because they were believed to agitate desire and passion, undermining the mental stillness that meditation required, and that battle, paradoxically, also required. What remained was seasonal vegetables prepared with extraordinary technical attention, tofu in multiple preparations, sesame, mountain vegetables, konnyaku, mushrooms, and miso, ingredients chosen and handled to find maximum expression in minimum complexity. The cuisine made an argument in food that samurai training made in physical practice, that restraint and focused attention produced more from less than abundance and distraction ever could. Several major commanders of the Sengoku period spent significant periods in temple retreat between campaigns. Their accounts of the experience, filtered through the formal language of the period, consistently described the food as clarifying, as having removed something from their thinking that campaign life had put there. What they meant, reading carefully, is that the simplicity of the meals had restored a quality of attention that violence and survival had eroded. Number 16. Kayu, plain rice porridge. Plain rice porridge appeared at samurai tables in two distinct contexts that seem contradictory until you understand the reasoning behind each. It appeared during illness and recovery, the gentle, easily digestible meal prescribed for bodies under physical stress. And it appeared the night before major battle, the deliberate choice of experienced commanders who understood the relationship between digestion and performance in a way that no formal sports science existed yet to articulate. A heavy meal before combat diverts blood to the digestive system and away from the muscles and the brain. It creates physical sluggishness at precisely the moment clarity and speed are most demanded. Kayu sat lightly in the stomach while delivering sustained energy from slowly digesting starch. It was familiar, calming, and warm, qualities that matter to a man trying to sleep the night before an engagement he may not survive. The accounts of the night before Sekigahara that open this video describe multiple senior commanders eating plain kayu in their field tents. Whether those accounts are exact or slightly embellished, they reflect an accurate understanding of what experienced warriors believed about food and the body on the day that mattered above all others. Number 15. Kifchinjiru, root, vegetable, and tofu soup. Kenshinjiru originated in Zen temple kitchens, specifically, according to the most consistent historical accounts, at Kenshoji Temple in Kamakura, founded in 1253. The dish used crumbled tofu, burdock, daikon, taro, and konnyaku, sautéed in sesame oil and simmered in soy-seasoned dashi into a hearty, deeply nourishing soup that contained no meat but delivered protein, fiber, and complex carbohydrates in a single bowl. Samurai training at Kenshoji and similar temples ate this soup daily. When they returned to their lord's service, they brought the recipe with them. By the mid-Muromachi period, Kenshinjiru had crossed from the monastery into warrior households across eastern Japan, where it occupied a practical niche, a meal that satisfied completely without requiring the expense or the logistical complexity of meat. The sesame oil used to sauté the vegetables was expensive enough that its presence in a dish indicated a household of at least moderate means. A kenshinjiru made with good sesame oil, careful dashi, and properly crumbled tofu was a meal that announced competence and stability without announcing extravagance. In a warrior culture that viewed excess as a character flaw, this was exactly the right statement to make with dinner.